may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, guys, gonna be completely honest here. I was not planning on making these videos so soon. I thought, you know what? It's probably best if I go through and I just make 1 to 2 videos a week for this main redraft fantasy football channel. But y'all absolutely destroyed the past 2 videos. I mean, blew away my expectations on the amount of likes, the amount of comments that y'all decided to leave. And a lot of the comments were, hey Mason, what do you think about J.K. Dobbins? Hey Mason, what do you think about James Robinson? What do you think about Miles Sanders? What do you think about player X? So I was like, you know what? I can't really just sit here and drop my top 12 rankings on y'all for the running back position. I should probably go a little bit deeper than that, just so we have a decent understanding on where we currently stand with these running backs in fantasy football. So what I think I'm probably going to do over the next week or so is I'm going to release my rankings for the top 24 running backs in fantasy, the top 24 wide receivers in fantasy, the top 12 quarterbacks, the top 12 tight ends. That way we can have a very simple beginning to this offseason, and then we can see how the offseason kind of changes these rankings, because I guarantee you things are going to change. We are going to see offensive lines improve or maybe lose some key members throughout the course of the offseason. We are going to see quarterbacks change teams. We are going to see other running backs brought in for some competition. So these rankings are not set in stone, but I think they give us a decent foundation on where we can start this offseason in preparing for the 2021 season. So yeah, this video, I am not going to be rehashing the top 12 running backs that I previously discussed. Instead, I'm going to be getting down to the running back 2 rankings. And if you are interested in the top 12 rankings, we already have 2 videos on the channel. Just go, you can look at them quite easily. I will do a small little recap for y'all with who the 12 running backs previously ranked were in no particular order. If you want to know the order of those, go to the other video. We have Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, Austin Eckler, Cam Akers, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, and Aaron Jones, all off the board. Maybe I should have said that a little bit slower, that way you could keep track. But let me repeat that one more time, just so you know who is not going to be discussed in this video and who has already been ranked inside the top 12 running backs. Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, Austin Eckler, Cam Akers, Jonathan Taylor, Ezekiel Elliott, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Christian McCaffrey. Now, obviously, those were not in order, but regardless, let's stop wasting any time. Let's get down to business, and let's start ranking these running back 2s. And our first running back, I guarantee you, we are going to be a lot higher on him than the majority of the other people in the fantasy community. But this is going to be Joe Mixon. Okay, so I know automatically whenever I bring up Joe Mixon, we have people rolling their eyes. We have people going, Mason, do you not remember what happened in 2020? Do you not remember how bad the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line was? And I'll say, yes, I 100% remember what happened. If we start the year with Joe Mixon, what we see Mixon being used in a way that is not a high leverage situation for a running back to score a ton of fantasy points. Joe Mixon was pretty much used as the first and second down grinder for a Cincinnati Bengals offense that was deciding not really to give their running backs out of the backfield a decent amount of targets. And this was with Joe Burrow dropping back and throwing the ball like 50 times a game. I mean, if I would have just told you some of those Cincinnati Bengals scores and we would have just looked at the talent of Joe Mixon, you would go, oh crap, is Mixon a top 6 running back in this situation? Is Mixon a league winner? Where in reality, I mean, he wasn't close to that. But halfway through the season, something changed. Halfway through the season, we had Joe Mixon with a monstrous performance where, yes, he was already getting that volume. He was already seeing over 20 carries a game. But what ended up changing for Joe Mixon is he then started to get the usage in the receiving game. And that unlocked so much for Joe Mixon, where despite his early on struggles, he was able to still finish as a top 10 running back in points per game with 17 points per game And now, if we are trying to project into 2021, we know that Joe Mixon is one of the few running backs in the NFL that has a contract that dictates, you know what, he's going to be here. He is going to be the starting running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. So he's an extremely safe option in that regard. And also, I mean, this Bengals team is 100% going to see an upgrade at either the offensive line or the wide receiver position. And I know a lot of people are going to say, Mason, why are you even bringing up wide receiver? But if you understand how fantasy points are generated for the team's running back, if you understand the impact of facing stack boxes has, it doesn't matter if the Cincinnati Bengals go out there and they draft a offensive lineman with their first overall pick. That's at the very beginning of the draft. If Joe Mixon's going to be running up against boxes that have 7, 8, 9 men at all times, I mean, that is going to go very poorly for Mixon. So regardless of if Joe Mixon and the Cincinnati Bengals get an upgrade on offensive line or an upgrade at wide receiver, it's going to be an upgrade for Mixon. Because say they decide to take Ja'Marr Chase in the very beginning of the first round of the 2021 NFL Draft, then what we are going to see is we are going to see that opposing defenses against T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Ja'Marr Chase, and Joe Burrow have no option but to play with two safeties back the entire time. And what that is going to allow is that's going to allow Joe Mixon, even if he's running behind a poor offensive line, he's going to see so few defenders in the box that he is going to get to 3 to 4 yards consistently without even having to break a tackle, just by running straight ahead. And we know that Mixon also has the profile where he can be a 3-down running back. He can be someone also that is going to not only see 30 touches a game, but be efficient with those touches based on his overall talent. So yeah, Mixon, I know some people want to be out here and just raise some alarms. They just fire off alarms, raise some flags that the offensive line isn't there, that Joe Mixon has suffered injuries throughout his entire NFL career. But I'm looking at this team and going, if Joe Burrow can come back at the beginning of the season, not week 1, we don't need Burrow back week 1, but as long as he's back by 4, 5, or 6, I think then this Cincinnati Bengals offense could easily be a top 5 offense in the NFL. And that's going to open up so much for Joe Mixon. All right, so now let's get to our next running back. And this running back on the list is going to be making the biggest jump out of any of these players from 2020 to 2021. And this is going to be J.K. Dobbins. So yes, I'll say right away, I know that I am not being aggressive with the J.K. Dobbins ranking here. I know some other people are willing to come out here and put him as a low-end running back 1. Now, the reason that I cannot put Dobbins as a low-end running back 1 and instead we are going to have him as a high-end running back 2 is because I think in the receiving game, J.K. Dobbins has a little bit of a cap ceiling. And on top of that, what we just saw with Kenyon Drake and the Arizona Cardinals in 2020, which should remind us what the pros and the cons are for having that dual threat quarterback, is that J.K. Dobbins could end up getting vultured with his touchdowns at the goal line by Lamar Jackson consistently. That's what we saw with Kenyon Drake and Kyler Murray. And at the same time, if Lamar Jackson is dropping back, and if he's like, oh, okay, we have no wide receivers downfield, Lamar Jackson then has the option to tuck it and run, where you see some other quarterbacks like a Drew Brees, a traditional pocket passer, he doesn't have that option. He goes, okay, Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, Manuel Sanders, they are all covered downfield. Then what are we doing? We are looking down to check the ball to Alvin Kamara. And when you're playing with that rushing quarterback, you're just not going to see the same amount of targets out of the backfield. So that is something that we have to bring up right away with J.K. Dobbins. But even though it does limit the upside in the amount of receptions that a running back is going to see when they are playing with that Lamar Jackson, that Kyler Murray, the Josh Allen, the dual threat quarterback, what is also going to happen is we are also going to end up seeing that running back have so much space to operate in. Because whenever Lamar Jackson goes to hand the ball off to J.K. Dobbins, the opposing linebackers, they can't come in and crash right away. They can't go, okay, it's a J.K. Dobbins rush attempt. Let's crash on the edge. Let's go get Dobbins. Whereas if it's a Drew Brees and an Alvin Kamara, obviously, if Brees goes to hand it off, that ball is either going to be handed off to Kamara or it's going to be play action. But regardless, that linebacker is going to be crashing down, where when it's a read option more so with Lamar Jackson, that's going to make the linebacker kind of freeze there because he has to worry about Lamar Jackson coming off the edge if he decides to crash. So there are some positives, there are some negatives with playing alongside that elite rushing quarterback. But in the case of J.K. Dobbins, I just think the upside is going to be so high we have to put him here at 14. Just say that the Baltimore Ravens are able to come anything close to what they were in 2019 when Lamar Jackson had that ridiculous touchdown rate. And no, he's not going to be able to make it back there. That rate was always unsustainable. But if he kind of goes halfway there and halfway what he did in 2020, and this is a team that does not have Mark Ingram, and they go, you know what? Yes, we want to get Gus Edwards involved, but J.K. Dobbins is the most talented running back that we've had here in the past 3 or 4 seasons. I think instead of giving Dobbins 60% of the workload and Edwards 40%, maybe we should change it up where Dobbins is seeing 70, 75%, and then Edwards is seeing the rest. Then I think Dobbins does have the upside to vault up to being that top 5 running back. But the reason we are going to have him down here at 14 is just because his usage in the receiving game is going to be a little bit capped with Lamar Jackson. And at the same time, we don't know if the Baltimore Ravens are going to be able to get back to that elite level. So we're going to have Dobbins here at 14. All right, so now I know that probably y'all were upset with the Mixon ranking. Now y'all are going to be very, very upset with our next guy. But coming in at 15, we are going to have Clyde EdwardsHelaire. And okay, with CEH, I will acknowledge a few things. Yes, I was way too high on him in 2020. I thought that CEH was going to come out here and be a league-winning running back right out the gate. I went, this is a running back that was just invested into with a first-round pick by Mahomes and Andy Reid. They're going to look to get him involved whenever they can. They're going to look to get him targeted out of the backfield. And to go along with that, he is playing alongside the best quarterback that we have possibly ever seen. And we know that this offense is going to be a top 3 offense in trips to the red zone and overall points scored. And if you know anything about how fantasy points are scored at the running back position, obviously overall offensive output dictates so much on what you're going to be expecting from that starting running back. So with Clyde EdwardsHelaire, I thought he was going to be legit. I thought that he was going to be unreal starting day one. And no, that did not happen. What we ended up seeing instead is we ended up seeing the running game for the Kansas City Chiefs look extremely ineffective for whatever reason, even though they weren't going up against stacked boxes. And like we should have known, like we should have taken into account, the Kansas City Chiefs are always going to be leading the league in expected pass rate just because, I mean, if you have Tyreek Hill, if you have Travis Kelce, if you have Patrick Mahomes, of course, you're not going to be looking to rush the ball on first and second down. You're going to be looking to try to air it out as much as you can. So yeah, Clyde EdwardsHelaire not going to be that top 5 running back that I initially thought, but I still think that he has the upside to go into that range. And the downside is going to be very minimal with Clyde EdwardsHelaire because we know he is always going to be attached to this league-leading offense. And combined with that, Clyde EdwardsHelaire is always going to be the first option at the running back position because Andy Reid decided to invest significantly into CEH. So when you make that type of investment, the last thing you can do is go with a replacement level running back. I know people want to go, but Mason, look at the Le'Veon Bell touches from 2020. And what I'm going to say to that is I'm going to say, hey, Clyde EdwardsHelaire was 21 years old. Cut the man a break. Give him a little bit of time to develop. And I think if you're going to be getting him possibly in round 3 in 2021, I think it's a worthwhile shot to take on a high upside running back too. All right, so yeah, we missed on Clyde EdwardsHelaire last year in 2020. So what we need to do now is let's go over to another running back that we completely whiffed on. And this is going to be Miles Sanders. So yeah, guys, I know. I mean, Miles Sanders failed on so many different levels with our fantasy teams in 2020. You can blame it on the offensive line, which was the worst offensive line that Philadelphia has seen in the past 5 years. You can blame it on Carson Wentz, and Carson Wentz actually graded out to be one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the entire NFL in 2020. But lastly, I think we can blame it a little bit on Miles Sanders, as it hurts me so much to do. As y'all know, I'm a Miles Sanders fanboy. What was bad was the usage that we saw from Boston Scott. What was really bad for Miles Sanders and his future projection is the fact that Boston Scott was getting usage in the receiving game down the stretch whenever the Philadelphia Eagles were in pass-happy mode. Now, that's something I wasn't expecting, because we know Miles Sanders can catch the ball. He proved that at Penn State. He proved that in his rookie season. That has never been a question, and I know Boston Scott's supposed to be this pass-catching specialist. But when you have Miles Sanders, and he is so much more effective at making defenders miss in the open field, at breaking tackles, I would think that Miles Sanders is close to an every down running back for you. And the big red flag that we saw was the Boston Scott usage, but still very similar to a J.K. Dobbins. I'm looking at Miles Sanders as almost one and the same. That Sanders may not necessarily project to see a ridiculous Alvin Kamara type target share, because he's going to be playing alongside one of those rushing quarterbacks in a Jalen Hurts. I think what we are going to expect with Miles Sanders is just a very safe running back that if Jalen Hurts is able to elevate this Philadelphia Eagles offense, if they possibly go out there and get a Jamar Chase, a Devontae Smith in the first round, and that opens things up like Justin Jefferson did for the Minnesota Vikings in 2020, that is how Miles Sanders reaches his top 5 upside. Now, I will say there are red flags on this profile, but that's why we're talking about him being a mid-running back 2 and not necessarily a mid-running back 1. So Miles Sanders here, also on his rookie contract, going to be a safe asset in that it's very unlikely that they look to replace him as the starting running back this upcoming year. So I'm going to have him at running back 16. Not too much I can change about that. Okay, so now our next running back, possibly I am just putting him here because of the bias that his name is always going to be attached to Miles Sanders, but we are going to have Josh Jacobs. Now, with Josh Jacobs, yeah, I know, very similar to Sanders. He was frustrating last year. We were not fans of Josh Jacobs. I was avoiding Jacobs at the back half of the first round because I was not necessarily a massive believer in his receiving game usage. I know that Josh Jacobs was actually compared to Alvin Kamara, as crazy as that sounds, when he was coming out of Alabama in the 2019 NFL Draft. That's a big reason in why the Las Vegas Raiders decided to take him in the first round. But Josh Jacobs, in his rookie season, did not see the receiving game usage that one would want to expect. So going into his sophomore year, I was like, you know what, Jacobs, not my guy. We are going to be avoiding. We do not want to be drafting him. And while, yes, he did fail, Josh Jacobs did not necessarily look fantastic. He was a mid-running back 2 with his points per game with 15. What we got from Josh Jacobs is actually something I wanted to see. While he did not live up to everyone else's expectations, I liked what I saw from Josh Jacobs, in that I saw a running back that can do a little bit of everything, and he actually impressed me with his receiving game usage. The only problem was that the Las Vegas Raiders offense was one of the worst offenses in the entire NFL. And unless you're a James Robinson, unless you are just a difference-making running back with nobody else in the backfield to take touches away from you, you are not going to be able to drag yourself to a top-end running back 1 finish if you were just playing on a piss-poor offense. But if we were projecting this Raiders team going into 2021, I think they can really only go up. They're going to have Henry Ruggs going into his second year. They are going to have, hopefully, an upgrade at quarterback. We can't say that for sure, but it's in the range of outcomes. So if the overall offense progresses, and we know Josh Jacobs is going to be a very safe running back to draft because he got that first-round draft capital in 2019, so that's going to dictate that he is the starting running back for this team going forward. I think that he's someone that has a nice floor and ceiling combination for us to be taking here as the running back 17 overall. All right, so now let's get to our next running back, and I know that y'all are probably pulling your hair out, screaming, saying, Mason, you forgot about him. You forgot about Antonio Gibson. And trust me, guys, no, I did not. Y'all know Antonio Gibson was one of our hashtag guys in the 2020 NFL Draft. I loved Antonio Gibson, especially in those dynasty formats, and a lot of people in the flock were able to win their leagues based on picking up Antonio Gibson very cheaply in their drafts. And Gibson looked fantastic this past season. If you look at his overall points per game, he was the running back 16 in points per game overall. But if you kind of zoom that down into after his bye week, he was the running back 11. Now, I will say one of the reasons that I'm a little bit hesitant to go all in with Antonio Gibson is just like what we talked about with Josh Jacobs, in that a running back on a very poor NFL offense is not necessarily going to have an easy path to finding himself in the top 5. I think Antonio Gibson is going to find himself in that situation in 2020. Now, just think about it. I mean, who is going to be the quarterback for the Washington football team? I personally have no idea. I do not want to say it's going to be Taylor Heinicke because that would be disgusting, and all my Antonio Gibson shares would hate that. Now, if they can find a quarterback upgrade, then I think Antonio Gibson can easily be one of the furthest risers on this list throughout the course of the offseason. But until then, until we see that upgrade and we can project the offense to just not be at the bottom of the NFL, I think then we have to be a little bit hesitant to go out there and rank Antonio Gibson while he looks so much better than a running back that we previously talked about in Clyde EdwardsHelaire. We can't be ranking Gibson over CEH based on their respective offenses. Okay, now, thank you guys. I really hope y'all enjoyed this video. I really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if y'all did, go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It helps us out so much, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.